Welcome, everybody, to the Vegan Champion Podcast. Today's guest, we have Hudson Tarlow. How's it going, man?
What's going on? So happy to be here.
Dude, it's good to have you. We are two of few TikTok warriors that are out there doing the vegan message on TikTok. We are working together with Anonymous for the Voiceless, which is how we met, and you are crushing it over on TikTok, not only there, but on Instagram. And are you on YouTube as well? Where all are you on social media?
Yeah, I'm on YouTube. Yeah. Yes,
Sick.
but it's nowhere near the attraction as TikTok because TikTok is just
You get
insane.
you get
Even though
so many more
I've
views
been
right
doing
now, right?
YouTube for 4 years. I have a
Yeah,
total making a video every week. I haven't skipped a
yeah.
week years. I have a total of 30,000 channel views.
Uh-huh.
And then if I get 30,000 views on one TikTok, I'm like, oh,
And
I didn't even do.
yeah, so there's just no comparison. I mean, you might as
Yeah.
well that's the way I feel too, man, because yeah, we're both seeing what's happening with TikTok right now, and it's super, super cool. And I'm glad that like, how old are you, Hudson? You're a younger dude. You're what, 18,
I'm
19,
18. Yeah.
18? Hudson, if you guys don't know Hudson, definitely go check him out. Check out his TikTok videos and YouTube. And, you're doing lots of outreach, vegan outreach, and you're really just getting the vegan message out there. And I know that you get a lot of responses. I think you get a lot of hate, but a lot of good response as well. Like, you've got a lot of people who are following you and are really appreciating the outreach you're doing, from the vegan side. And the non-vegan side, well, yeah, they get upset and they they like to comment and try to debunk your videos. But you're doing a great job, dude. I really appreciate all the work you're putting out there. So tell everybody how you got started with veganism. Were you always vegan? Were you born to a vegan family, or did you find it at some point, and when did that happen?
Sure. Yeah, I found it just like anyone else from the internet. I was vegetarian, so I was actually raised vegetarian in like a
Oh,
vegetarian
okay.
household. And for me, the only reason why I was vegetarian was just because my family was. So I never had, it was just like a personal choice diet. Like, oh yeah, I'm vegetarian, my family is. Never really thought much of it. And then what happened was, yeah, I was on YouTube, and the first guy I found was Joey Carbstrong. He was the first person I watched who really laid out the moral imperative for veganism. And then it kept it was like a bell ringing in my head again and again. And I got more and more videos recommended. And then the trigger that made me do it is I found a guy on YouTube called The Vegan Activist.
Uh-huh.
And he had like 100 videos, and I watched like every single one. I watched him for like 9 hours straight. And I went from the beginning being like, yeah, I'm not going to go vegan. It's inspiring, but not for me. And then at the end, I'm like, all right, that's it. I'm going vegan. And yeah, so just like everyone else, the internet is how I became vegan.
That's really cool. So you were just growing up and you were sort of it was normal to be vegetarian in your family. That was just how you were raised. But then there was this difference. And when you started learning about all the vegan stuff, how did your family, how has your family responded to it since? Because I mean, a lot of people, maybe if they're not vegan, they don't really appreciate just sort of how different, being vegetarian and being vegan is. So how has your family's response been to that?
At first, it was negative. They were like, no, there's no way. Kidding me? You're not, you need protein, you need to eat eggs, you need dairy. So there's no way you're giving those up. Because even though I was vegetarian, it's funny because I had more dairy and more eggs to make up for the supposed
I
lack.
did too. I went vegetarian for like a year when I was
Yeah.
14, and I was so convinced that I needed to eat more milk and eggs because
Yeah, that's kind of, yeah, we're just so brainwashed, right?
yeah.
And so, yeah, but then I just, I'm not even sure if I convinced them, but I just like did it. I just was like, no, I'm not gonna listen to you guys. And I just did it. And then I instantly went from being slightly overweight to being in the best shape of my life.
Mm.
And then I instantly lost like 20 pounds and started getting muscle. And so then my parents were like, all right, well, clearly we were wrong about that. And then my
They
mom,
just admitted just that
yeah,
easily. Oh,
yeah.
that's
So
good, man.
so then my sister, she just ended up going vegan after I did. She was like, okay, yeah, may as well. And then so did my mom. My mom was like, all right, well, if my two kids are vegan, yeah, I'll do it. And then my dad, he didn't. And for years, I was just leading by example, thinking, all right, well, that's how I shouldn't be too confrontational. I don't want to be too pushy. And then eventually in 2020, at the beginning of this year, I really started to have those tough conversations. And at first it was tough, but then the more I had those conversations, the more my dad understood why I was vegan and how important of a thing it was. And then as of like a few months, my dad has now been vegan too.
That's super cool. That's it's always so interesting. It's always such a topic that people are always really curious about, is like how to deal with family and stuff like that. And so I'm always curious to hear how, people's families are responding to their, their veganism. So when did that happen with you, that you went vegan? So you're vegetarian until what age did you find
Yeah,
joy?
so I went vegan in June 9th, 2017 was the date.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome, man. You remember the day.
Yeah, I do. It's sort of, that was the day, but then unfortunately, like 2 weeks later, I saw at the bottom of the freezer there was a like old microwave, like like pizza bites or something. So I ate those, and I wish I didn't eat those because now I don't know the 100% exact date, but
Mm.
it's
Well, I remember too. Like I think that there was a time when like it was a day that I basically like decided I was going to be vegan. And there were like a couple little things within the like, you know, weeks and like maybe a couple months following. Like I remember there was one time I was out after a gig and like there was nothing open except for pizza. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll have some vegetarian pizza, but like
Mhm.
instantly regretted it, like
Yeah, yeah,
mine had already been made up, and just the circumstances, threw something at me just to sort of, I think, just confirm,
yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
no,
And so
this is,
what about, when was it for you? When did you become vegan?
I became vegan when I was in second year of university. So it was like late 2009.
Okay,
And
cool.
yeah, I went vegetarian when I was 14 for a year, because I was really impacted by the liner notes of Goldfinger, "Open Your Eyes," of that album. And
Wait, is Goldfinger 99 Red Balloons?
yeah, they did 99
Oh, okay. Oh,
Revolutions. Yeah,
cool.
but
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
but
Wait,
they
are
also
they
got
vegan?
this wicked album. "Open Your Eyes" is all about. I mean, the liner notes were all about animal, like what happens to animals for all of the nasty things that people do to animals. And I was so in like I just couldn't believe it after I read those liner notes. I just couldn't eat meat for a few months, but I eventually went back to eating meat because I just felt like so, like just the social pressure of just being like the weird one out, and like just acceptance and stuff. And there was a point where I was okay. I went back to eating meat for a while, but then a few years later in university was when I got like strep throat. I was getting like sore throat all the time, and I was like, why is this happening? So I looked it up, and then I realized that animal products are not good for my health, especially dairy. Like that's to come back to the whole thing about vegetarian and vegan, right? Like I think actually for me, when I went vegetarian, I was like eating so much more cheese, so much more dairy, so much more like eggs to make up for it. And I think that getting those foods out, actually probably from a health perspective, where it's actually healthier than, I would say, the meat. Like if you give up meat but you go and eat dairy and eggs, I don't think you're really doing your health that many favors. But if you get rid of
Yeah.
dairy and eggs, like because a lot of people are allergic to dairy, right? And they have all these things that are happening to their bodies. So yeah, when I went vegan, that really, really helped, like cleared up a lot of my health issues. Like I haven't had that throat infection I used to get all the time. I haven't had it since, 10 years. I used to get it all the time. So, but yeah, that was for me. When I went vegan. So when you said you saw Joey and then you saw the vegan activist, right? And then you
Yeah.
started really getting fired up about, because you're really like the way that you advocate. A lot of people wish they could advocate like you, because you know you've got a really just rock solid approach. Like you're not apologetic. And like, I mean, maybe we can talk about, because we both work with AV, Anonymous for the Voiceless, and Paul. We both know Paul really well. We've had Paul and Asal on the podcast before. Probably going to have them on again soon. I'm just trying to smash these out as much as I can. But so how did you, like, what have you learned since being vegetarian is normal, and then okay, veganism is important, and then okay, like I want to like make videos and really like get this message out there. Like what is it that you've sort of learned on that path of advocating for veganism? What are some things you can share with people?
I guess the main thing that I've learned when it comes to all of this is how important it is to place yourself in the animal's position. Because no matter all of these steps, before I was vegan, I wasn't placing myself in the animal's position. I was thinking from my point of view, where sure I could try to justify it because I'm not the victim, I'm not the one being harmed and abused. And then I had to think from the animal's position and be like, wait, that's not right. There's a victim to my choice. And then that's what led me to veganism. And then when I was vegan, I wasn't speaking up. I wasn't speaking up about this. And because once again, I was thinking from my point of view, like, oh, it's a bit inconvenient. I don't want to be that vegan. I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to do that stuff. And then once again, I just had to put myself in the animal's position. If I were one of those animals having my throat cut open and being abused, what would I want people like myself who have the ability to speak for them? What would I want them to do? And then I became an activist. And then once again, I became an activist and I was promoting baby steps and reducitarian. And then I'm like, wait a minute, if I was one of those baby animals being killed for the baby steps that I'm promoting, what would I want people to do? So I think it all just comes down to always placing yourself in the animal's position. Then I think it becomes really clear how you should advocate. And that's what I found has been really helpful for me in always making sure that I am confident in my message.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's super powerful. I think I mean, when we, when we advocate for veganism with AV, like at the AV events, I really like that about Anonymous for the Voiceless, is that we focus on that kind of outreach where, you know, we're not, you know, beating around the bush. It's like you're direct, you're talking about what needs to be talked about, and you're not afraid to say what needs to be said. And there's a lot of people out there advocating for eating plant-based diets because they're better for the environment or they're better for health. And like, that's great, you know, nothing wrong with that. But if we're talking about veganism, like, why are we skipping over what's happening to the animals, right? We got to remember what's happening to them, and we've got to speak up about that. And you definitely do a very good job of that. But, you know, it causes controversy. Like it's not that controversial to tell people that eating fruits and vegetables is good for you. It's not that controversial to say that, like, you know, factory farming is bad for the environment, but it is controversial, and it causes a lot of, you know, friction with people when you start identifying, you know, the moral, like, injustice that's taking place here. So you get a lot of, you know, people firing back comments. And, you know, obviously, you know, your family, I mean, you might say you're in, you know, your family's, you know, pretty supportive of you in this, I think, as mine is. And like, you know, but there's, you know, there's always friends and other people out there in society. Like, how have you found it being vegan and being such a, like, a vocal vegan, you know, in, well, actually, you are homeschooled, is that right?
I'm homeschooled this year because of over last summer, Paul and Saul
But
offered me the job, so then I had to homeschool. Before that,
okay,
this
so,
is my first year homeschooling though.
oh, okay, so before that, so I mean, I'm just trying to think about, you know, interactions you're having with people who are non-vegans, and, you know, how do you sort of navigate the non-vegan world that we live in, you know, knowing the things that you know and advocating the way that you advocate? Like, are you advocating to everybody, like all your friends, all you, like everybody you meet? Are you, like, in real life, are you very outspoken, or do you sort of save it for social media, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to think. Lately, now that I've been homeschooled, like this past year, I've just been, you know, working around the clock, doing a full-time job while trying to complete high school. So the only time I'm ever really out is when I'm out at a cube or when I'm going to the gym. Uh, when it came to, you know, here's what I wish I could say yes. I wish I could say I was always Mr. like direct in how I am on the streets. In this world, we're so conditioned to pander to animal abuse and to let excuses slide that I'm not perfect. So that's the first thing I want to say. I wish that I was 24/7 always just holding people accountable, because that's what the animals deserve.
Mm.
And I am a hypocrite, because if I were in the animal's position, I would want people like myself to be doing that. I haven't yet, just because I think it's human nature to care what other people think of you, you know? And the majority of the time, lately I have been like, I've just been holding people accountable, but like, you know, there are some times where for example, like, just I was traveling in New Zealand right before this pandemic. I had to come home early. with another guy who works for AV. And we were in hostels, and when we were staying in the hostels, in the first few days, every time I had a conversation, I was holding people accountable, like being direct, like, saying like this is animal abuse. And then it just sort of like, it's draining, what I'm trying to say? It gets to you.
Yeah.
And then I remember like the last day when we were leaving, someone said they're like vegetarian. And I'm just like, cool. Like, cause it's hard, it's
let
like,
it go.
like you don't want to have, it's like you said,
It takes energy. It takes energy to have these conversations.
It does. So it's like I am at the point where my goal is to always just keep working and being more effective.
Yeah.
And
you have to choose your moments. I think you got to choose your moments. You can't win them all. You got to choose your battles. I think.
Yeah. So what I would say is I always hold people accountable, and at the same time I'm human, and it's just human nature. You want to be liked by the pack, or else you're gonna be isolated, and then the tribe is gonna leave you, right? So as it's like I'm always doing my best, but I also don't want to portray this image that like 24/7 I'm like always just on the streets holding people accountable, like. But it's that my goal is to get to that point. My goal is to get over those fears and get to that. And that's something that I've been definitely improving on over like the past year, especially since joining AV. But I'm still working on it.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Yeah, you've got your goal in mind, and you're not. I like it, man. You're such a, you're not fronting. You're not fronting and trying to say that you're perfect. You're letting us see where you're at and what you think, which is super cool, because yeah, man, nobody's perfect, and it's hard to be, going against this is what I always say, man, is that like the hardest part of being vegan is you're going against the grain of society. You're going against like what everybody does and thinks, and that's for sure the hardest part about being vegan. But then the flip coin of that is like, that's nothing compared to how hard it is to like what's happening to the animals, going back to what you were saying before, putting yourself in the animals, in their shoes and looking at things from their perspective. Right. But it is, we are human. And I think that, it doesn't look like you're beating yourself up for not being perfect. And that's good. I'm glad to see that, because yeah, we are all only human. And of course, if we look at it from the animal's perspective, they want people like yourself who are so effective at speaking up for them to be sustainable in your effort. They don't want you to burn out and then not, be able to do what you're doing. So you gotta walk this road of life with some, I think, some self-compassion, some compassion for yourself and some of the challenges that you take. But man, you're doing a wicked job. And I think I'd like to know more about what you think about when you're creating content. Like if you have some advice for vegans who are out there, and let's say maybe they wish they could do more, they wish they could maybe do more social media content. Walk us through your process a little bit. So where do you get, inspiration from, or video ideas? Like, just, can you talk a little bit about your process for creating content?
Yeah, I think my process and the best tips I'd give is to not overthink it and just do. Because for me, when I first became wanting to do activism, when I first wanted to become an activist, I was always looking at these Joey Carbstrong videos and these Earthling Ed videos and these very high production things where the people have all this stuff. So I'm like, oh shoot, oh my God, like I gotta order this, I gotta research all these cameras. First I gotta order a camera, I gotta research into the lighting, I gotta buy some lights, I gotta research into this, research into that. And then I'm like, I gotta like write this whole script. And I did all of that. And then I got all this like equipment, and then I'm like, wait, I still have like no idea what to talk about. And then it hit me, I just gotta throw all that stuff out the door and just like if I get an idea, okay, like literally my process now is when it comes to TikTok, for example, I'll just think of like, like what's something I could make a TikTok on? How about the dairy industry? I'll just grab my phone, boom, all right, make a TikTok on the dairy industry. And like, that's that. I don't even overthink it. And then sometimes if I'm just like, I won't even bother adding any text or anything, like no filter, just film it. I don't even watch it back, and I just post it. And that's the advice that I give, because it's so easy to get caught up in that you need all of this fancy equipment, you need a whole long speech, you have to do years of research and all this memorization. Do you know a guy named Gary Vee?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm a huge fan. Yeah.
Yeah, so Gary, somebody was like, Gary, I really want to do live streams like you're doing, but I'm poor, like I live in, blah, blah, blah. I don't have enough money. And then he's like, what? He's like, you want to do live streams like me? He's like, you want to see what my tripod is? And he pulls out from his tripod and it's a banana. He's using a banana peel that he like molded into like a 3 legs for his like
Oh,
phone.
that's cool.
Using,
Yeah.
like, tape. So he was interviewing Gary Vee. If you don't know who Gary Vee is, he's an entrepreneur. He's worth over $200 million. He has 7 million followers on Instagram. He was doing his live stream with a banana as a tripod. So that just goes to show that you don't need any fancy stuff. Like right now, if you have a phone, just whatever you want, like, I don't know, whatever is bothering you in the world when it comes to this. If you're like, just whatever you feel like needs to be changed when it comes to this. If you think more light needs to be shed on a specific industry or a specific practice, or if you think you have a specific way of conveying this message, just get out your phone and then just make. And like me and Jason were saying earlier, if you're wanting to make content right now, I would say focus 90% of your time on TikTok, because that is the place where you can be have no following, no nothing. And then so there's some people within 24 hours, they have 1 million followers and then to the next big thing.
So,
Yeah.
for just going back, because I mean, for you, it's easy to say, I just get an idea about making a video about the dairy industry, and then I just make a video. So like for a lot of people, it's like, well, wait a second, how did that all go down there? But you're not overthinking it, because I think to you, it's, I mean, maybe you seem to have some talent, like you do really great material. So maybe it's not as easy for other people to just, make a video. But I think that what you're saying about not overthinking, the production and all the, the equipment and everything like that. Like if you overthink that, it's like, well, hang on, why are people overthinking that? And I think that comes to the fear of, what are people going to think about this? Right. I think that's what I think most people, like, everybody's probably had a video, had an idea for a video that they could make, and they didn't make it. And why didn't they make it? It's not because they necessarily didn't understand how to produce the video. That process, they could have probably figured it out, but they convinced themselves somewhere along the way that if they made that video, somebody might leave a nasty comment, or somebody might see it and think, that they're stupid or whatever. I think that's really what's at the core of it. So how do you avoid, I mean, like you said, you'll post video, you won't even look at it. Like once it's uploaded, like you won't even care. So how did you get to that stage where you just, I mean, I can sense it from you that you don't really care what people think. Like, am I right in sensing that from you, that you don't really put that much value on, other people's opinions?
Yeah, I don't even, the negative comments, I don't even care when I look at them on TikTok. And even the positive comments, they're cool to see, but at the same time, I don't overvalue when I get a super positive comment, because just in general, I think what it comes down to is that you have to be, if you, for example, if you're overvaluing the positive comments too much, then when you get a negative comment, you're going to be really upset because you're valuing outside validation. I think what it really comes down to, and something that I've just been working on, just self-development, is just not worrying about any outside opinions, whether it's good or bad, and just in your head, just staying confident when it comes to your message. And for me, the way I've really done that is just by thinking about what the animals are going through and just always going from there.
Right. Yeah, I guess it's two sides of the same coin, right? If people are leaving good or bad comments, like, how much do you value the comments? If you're too caught up in, oh yeah, I got all these good comments on this video, then what are you going to think? You're going to think that, oh, now you have to make another video like that. And so you lose your creative freedom, because you feel like you're always trying to make something for what people like. Like, this is something that I struggle with for sure. I make a video speaking a bit of Thai and like has nothing to do with veganism, and it does really well on TikTok. It's like, okay, now do I have to make all these Thai videos that are, silly and don't have a vegan message? But it's like, no, like, I want to make videos about veganism. So I'll keep making the videos that maybe they only get a few hundred views or whatever. and maybe it flops or whatever, but I still wanted to make that video, and I didn't think too much about whether people would like it or not. I made it because I wanted to make it. So I think that's really, you just got to put the blinders on, right? You got to just do your thing, and
Yeah.
like let the chips fall where they may. Like, I mean, it seems like you enjoy the process too. That's another thing too, is like for you, video is your chosen sort of, creative outlet, like your preferred media, right? Whereas not everybody maybe wants to make videos. Maybe some people want to do podcasts, or they want to write, or they want to, do photos or whatever. And that's all good too. But you can take some of the things that Hudson, that you're saying here, and people can apply that to their other mediums. So
Yeah,
so
that's something that one last thing to add, if you're back on the other point, like what if you have any tips on how to create stuff, something that you just brought up that reminded me is think about what you're already interested in. Everybody is interested in something, no matter who you are. You have some sort of niche that you enjoy doing, or that some sort of content that you like consuming. So if you find yourself that you're never on YouTube and you don't really know what these YouTubers are saying, but you're always on Instagram looking at I don't know, all these meme pages or something. Or like,
yeah.
you're always on like, Twitter or whatever, or you're always like doing whatever, or you're always like writing songs or something. Like, my advice would be to mesh what you are already into vegan activism. That way you'll never feel like you're doing work. You're just going to feel like, oh, you're just having some fun. You're just doing your hobby, and that also happens to be speaking up for animals. So for example, I've seen a lot of people who I follow on Instagram who I don't even know what they sound like because they've never made a video, but they're really talented artists, and they're really talented graphic designers or painters or sketchers or whatever, or musicians. And then they write songs about animal liberation. They make really powerful graphic designs or paintings about, animals in slaughterhouses or something.
Yeah.
And that's something, if someone told me to go make a painting, I'd be like, dude, that's gonna be like 50 years. I'm gonna procrastinate on it. I'm never gonna do it. So that might be how you're feeling with video. You just don't enjoy talking in front of the camera. That's just not your thing. And it doesn't have that. So I think that's something that activism, there isn't just some like the set mold you have to follow. I'd recommend finding your interests and figuring out how you can blend that into activism.
For sure, man. For sure. We need people doing all kinds of stuff. If everybody was doing the same thing, it wouldn't work, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, man, for sure. So what else do you want to share with people today? Do you have any more advice? I mean, we've got some good advice, I think, for content creation and for, getting active, and some good advice for, just sort of dealing with some of the opinions or not caring. I guess it's not dealing with them. It's just not caring about it. Just not worrying
Yeah.
about what people think. What
Yeah.
what
I was
what
gonna. One other thing I would add is like I do like I'll read it, and I respect it. Like I'll get these messages, and I really like hearing what people have to say for feedback. It's one thing when people are just leaving like bacon emojis or something, but sometimes people will send me a message that's very constructive and very well written. I'm like, I really appreciate that. That actually is going to help my advocacy because, I never thought about that. Or yeah, I should explain it like this. That's going to be more effective. And I really appreciate that too. And when I get positive messages, I appreciate them and I'll listen to it. But then the thing is, I don't let that bring me down into a negative state. So I think it's good, don't just like be like, I'm never listening to anybody, but at the same time, don't overvalue it to the point where it brings you down and makes you sad, or to the point of where your happiness is relying off those positive messages. But you can still read them, you can still respect them, and you can still take inspiration from them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's the next level too, is to be able to not have to just totally ignore what everybody's saying, but actually to, have the sort of, I guess, humility to just, take that and, hear what people have to say and take that constructive criticism, put the ego to the side and just say, hey, here's somebody who's trying to help me to do what I do better. That's the best case scenario, right? If you have somebody who's genuinely trying to help, then that's really good. So so what do you think is the current state of, let's say, everybody under 20, the under 20s in the world right now, people who are under 20 years old? Do you think that we have a chance of getting mass numbers of young people to go vegan?
Right now, I would say if we keep advocating the way, oh shoot, my camera stopped. Let me start my camera again. There we go. Right now, the way that we're advocating, I think that we don't, because if we as a movement keep advocating as, you know, vegan, it's this cool diet, you lose some weight. It's like
Mm-hmm.
when you conflate it with things like the environmental movement and that has its time and place, you know, but when we project veganism as anything except justice for animals, I think that is very unattractive for people like my age. Like me, I'm not a nutritionist. I don't really care. You know, if somebody wants to eat junk food. So right now, I'd say, given that the majority of our movement is not promoting animal rights and this direct justice for animals approach and speaking about animal abuse, I feel like right now the majority of the population is not moving towards veganism. If you just look at the stats, in 2019, more animals were killed than ever before in slaughterhouses across the world. And that's an unfortunate thing to think about. I think that as activists, we should use that. And as vegans, we should use that to just take that as a wake-up call that we gotta be pushing this message and that we have to stop caring about what other people are going to say if we're too direct when more animals are being murdered and tortured than ever before. So we could use it as two ways. We use it to let us down and be like, man, you know, this sucks how these more animals are being killed, so therefore veganism is declining in the world, because while it is going up in some Western countries like, you know, US, Canada, in Asian countries, you know, it's veganism is dropping. But we can also use it to fuel our activism. Be like, okay, now is the year 2020, especially given our current situation when everyone's on social media. This is the time when I'm going to get on social media and spread that message. So I think that right now we're not at the point where veganism has that domino effect, which I think is even further motivation for why we should keep speaking up about this.
Yeah, I think I don't know if veganism is necessarily, you know, on a decline in like non-Western countries, like in more developing countries, but it's more so that they're eating more meat, right? Like
That's
like
yeah, that's the
like
biggest thing.
countries like China, like there actually is, you know, there's a fair vegan movement in China. From what I hear, I don't know it, and like I'm not that close to what's happening in China and veganism, but you know, there's a fair amount of people who are vegan in China, and I think that number it probably is growing in China. But the thing is, all the people who are not vegan are eating, you know, more and more meat in these developing countries, and, you know, all animal products. So that that is that's the reason why we're still seeing increase in, you know, the number of animals that are killed in slaughterhouses, even though the vegan movement is growing. Like we do see more
Yeah.
people that are going vegan, and, you know, more plant-based options and stuff like that. But I definitely hear what you're saying about people sort of, yeah, it's a lot more comfortable for people to advocate for plant-based diets for the purpose of health and for the environment. And I agree that it would be really good if, I mean, if you think of all the people, think of all the Instagram models and the YouTubers and like all the people who are, you know, talking about smoothies and how, you know, it's going to make you lose weight and all that. And like that, okay, that's great. But like, imagine if attached to all of those posts was like a real solid animal rights message. Like if that was in the vocabulary of a lot of the, you know, the influencers out there. A lot of people are shy to speak about that. A lot of people, I've seen some influencers like specify that they're, you know, they're plant-based for health, and not, you know,
Yeah.
go out of the way to say not vegan for, you know, just to make
And
sure.
that was me. Even I remember at the Week of Truth in New York City last July, I got there. It was an 8-day event with, if you don't know, is a Cube of Truth activism event for 8 days straight, 12 hours a day. And on a few days earlier, I was like, hearing all these people like they're saying we shouldn't be using the word vegan. And I fell into that trap. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I should say like plant-based. I should steer away from the vegan word. It might be too intimidating. I don't want to come across
Right.
those
Yeah.
vegans.
A lot of
So
people say that.
for the first few days, and so this thing, Paul Bashir was there. And for the first few days, I was avoiding using the word vegan. And I was saying, oh, do you think you might try some plant-based foods? And I think Paul Bashir heard my outreach conversation. And he was like, Hudson, what are you doing? And I was talking to him, and he's like, yeah, you should always say the word vegan. We have to normalize this. And so I'm totally guilty of that too, because it's very tempting to fall into that mindset that, we don't want to preach that word vegan. We should just say plant-based and ask people if they might consider some, meat-free options. But yeah, I think it's really important to make this definition of veganism really clear, that it's about the animals.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, I will use the like if I'm talking about a diet, yeah, I mean you could say vegan diet, but people who say that they eat a vegan diet for health, but they're not vegan for ethical reasons, I would say they're just not vegan. They're eating a plant-based diet, right? Like when we say you're vegan, that means like you're taking like an ethical stance on the issue. Like that's what being vegan is. But you can be a non-vegan eating a plant-based diet. Like I think that's what I saw in somebody's Instagram. I remember seeing it. It's like a non-vegan eating a plant-based diet. Like just to clarify, just want to make sure that people don't think that the person is vegan for the animals. And the reason that they feel like they have to clarify that, I'm sure, is because it's such a controversial thing, and they wouldn't want like people in the comments, it's like, because people get so upset if people say, oh, I'm just eating plant-based diet because it's good for my health, or oh, I'm eating plant-based diet because it's good for the environment. You get less pushback. But when you talk
yeah,
about it, when you talk about the animals, that's when you get all the pushback. So
yeah, that's why I think it's so important to. I think that just goes to show how important it is to talk about the animals. If it's
I think
such
so too.
a elephant in the room,
Yeah.
it's so just obscure, like, oh, nobody wants to talk about the animals, let's just keep it on health and environment.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing when all these people like Simon Cowell, uh all these celebrities or whatever, you always hear on plant-based news, and they're kind of like, oh, blah, 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 is going vegan for their health, blah, blah, is going vegan for the environment. It's so rare. Who do we have that's vegan for the animals? Joaquin Phoenix and Lewis Hamilton. There's like two celebrities that are vegan for the animals, and even them, they get so much hate. People criticize them.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
think there probably are more who are vegan for the animals, but they're afraid to speak up about it because of this
yeah,
very reason, right?
yeah, that's very true. So that's why I'm really passionate about promoting this message, because I want to normalize that. I want to normalize, especially for young people, being vegan for the animals.
Yeah, yeah, I love it, man. Coming back to the question, because I think that, I mean, I think people would generally agree with me that in general, the younger somebody is, the more likely they're still forming belief systems and stuff like that. Like it's easier to have a young person think about these issues in a way that they're actually able to change their mind. Like the older somebody gets, the more concrete those beliefs become, and the more difficult it is for people to sort of look honestly at some of the things that they might believe, and that might not be serving them or serving the greater good, right? Like people who are older, I think it's harder to have them change their minds. But younger people, I hope, I mean, I always have a hope that one of these days there's going to be like this, I don't know, just a revolution where people just wake up and, and realize what's going on. Like, and I think that it's, we are working towards it. Like it is going in that direction. Like I remain positive with all the people that I do see going vegan. And I just always, I'm just super curious what you think about the whole thing. And that's interesting that you think the emphasis, well, I mean, I guess it's to be expected, because I mean, I know you, and I know the way you advocate is that you do value that aspect of, speaking up about the animals, and making it really, getting rid of the stigma attached to speaking up about the animals. I'm with you on that 100%. And I think that veganism, if you try to sell veganism as a solution to all of your health problems, guess what? It's not. Health is about a lot more than just your diet. And I
Mhm.
mean, even being diet, you can be a junk food vegan, right? And that's not going to be healthy. It
Yeah.
might be slightly healthier than being a junk food, non-vegan. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a solution to health being vegan. And the same thing with the environment. Will switching to a plant-based diet or a vegan diet, will that lower your environmental footprint? Probably. But does it solve the problem? No. The problem that veganism solves is, this injustice that's happening to animals, and it has a lot of other good effects on other problems as well. But that's really the main issue that we're trying to tackle, right? And
Yeah, definitely.
I think if people see that, if people see it for what it is, and this is the thing, that it pulling back the curtain so that people can actually see what's going on to the animals. That's the controversial part, right? Because the reality is everybody's paying for what's happening behind that curtain, behind the walls of that slaughterhouse. Everybody except for the vegans, right? Everybody's paying for that. So that's why it's so controversial to say, hey, look at what's going on here. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Everybody is participating in it, and people get defensive. So that that's why it's so hard to speak up about. But how can we do this, Hudson? And I want you to give me the answer, but I don't expect you to have it because it's a hard question. But what do you think? What do you think we can be doing, like, to get people to want to rethink what they're doing, and to actually take this seriously? Like, what can we do more than just talking about the animals? Because I know that, like, do you think that there's some secret sauce in the way that we should be talking about it? Or do you think it's just a matter of simply everybody needs to be speaking up as much as possible and just sheer numbers of people speaking about it? Or is there some, trick? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I wish if there is a secret sauce, I wish that I knew it, because then I'd be doing it right now instead of doing this podcast. I'd be out
Yeah.
convincing people to go vegan left and right. I think that what it comes down to, and I'm always learning more and more, but so far, what I found is that a lot of it comes down to, and the huge majority of it comes down to, if who you're speaking with is willing and ready to hear what you have to say. You can't just go up with like a megaphone and just like yell in someone's face. You have to be respectful. You have to let the other person talk. You have to, know what you're saying. You have to have done, some your research. So there is some technique that is involved. You can't just, be a jerk to someone. At the same time,
Right.
There's very little that you can say to a very close-minded person that's going to get them to just instantly become vegan. So what I found is, in my experience at least, I've had a lot of times when I'm at a cube of truth doing outreach where it's like a 3-hour cube. For the first hour and a half, back to back, just awful conversations, back to back, awful. Nobody's listening. They're telling me I'm too extreme, just awful, worst day of my life. And then the second hour and a half is the first person telling me, oh my God, you just changed my life. I'm going vegan right now. And I'm using the same exact approach. And then for the next hour and a half, I have 10 more conversations. People are so thankful. They're like, how can we donate to this organization? How can I join? Like, thank you so much. And then, they'll connect on Instagram. They'll send me a DM a week later saying, I just want to tell you how grateful I was for that conversation. So what I've really learned the more I've done this, and I've really tried to analyze this, like, what could I, because I film all my outreach too. So I'm always able to watch it. And I see that I'm always, on those times, I'm doing the exact same approach. And within a matter of 10 minutes, and I'm one person, they're telling me I've changed their life. The other person, they're walking off calling me an idiot. So what I think, it, like you said about the numbers, it's a lot more of a numbers game than it is about
The
saying some
technique.
magic recipe out of your mouth.
Right.
The technique is very important, because there are a lot of times when you will, like, I'm always analyzing my technique. I change it a bit up every cube. So I'll spend like hours, watching my stuff, figuring out new techniques. So I think that's very important. So, but I also think that there's no amount of technique that you can use on a closed-minded person And
Mm.
with a lot of open-minded people, you could practically say anything as long as you're talking about veganism, and if they're open and if they're ready, they'll be like, oh, cool, I'm on board, let's do it. So yeah, I think that, and all that kind of takes some pressure out of it. So for me, I remember I used to get really nervous when I would go to cubes. My heart rate would go up a ton when I would do outreach, or when I was having conversations at the gym, when I was having conversations with friends. My heart rate would always go up like crazy because I was thinking about all these things. If they say this, I got to do this and all this stuff. And the more I've kind of taken a step back and just try to I don't know, just talk like a normal person and just not overthink it and just speak from my heart, and understand that some people are just closed-minded, they won't listen, and some people are just open-minded and will instantly listen. It's made it a lot easier. So when it comes to what approach should you be doing, what I'd say is I just speak from your heart, see where that takes you, and then while always keeping the animals into consideration and never compromising on that message by promoting, lifestyles that are going to result in them being harmed. And then just go from there, and you'll be able to tune it yourself and find what you feel is effective for the animals. And really, I just wouldn't over stress it, because what I found is that there's over stressing is then going to result you into like stuttering and just wasting a lot of energy when some people are just not willing to listen, and then you could be using that time to go find other people who will just instantly listen.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people put a lot of pressure on themselves to turn other people vegan, right? And exactly what you're saying is super important to keep in mind, that some people are ready for it and some people aren't. And like, there's only so much you can do. And that's not to say, I really like the way you put that. It's not to say that technique doesn't matter and you shouldn't be trying to be as effective a communicator as you can be, right? Like, you want to try to do the best you can, but you got to accept that, like, hey, there's two sides to every conversation. And if somebody doesn't go vegan, that does not mean that you're a failure, right? So that's important to keep in mind. And it's easy if you're doing just street outreach and this is some random person you're never going to see again, but that pill is a lot harder to swallow if that's your partner or your mom or your brother, or somebody who just you want so badly for them to get it, and somebody who you want to have in your life. People put a lot of blame on themselves, and I think that people get into a lot of tricky situations where you just want so badly to be able to convince somebody to be vegan, but you can't. So I think that's probably the hardest. I mean, if you're just doing outreach at a Cube of Truth and you just, it's just a matter of ending a conversation and it's like, okay, see you later, you don't get it, I'll talk to somebody who does. But do you have any experiences with people who are, let's say, close to you in your life, and you feel frustrated because they don't get it? And do you have any advice for other people who might be dealing with that kind of a situation?
Yeah, a lot of my, I do have friends who aren't vegan, and our relationships have sort of drifted, just because it is very hard when there's this huge elephant in the room, this huge, like, massive injustice that they're contributing to and that you want them so badly to change. And same thing with family, it is really tough, with like my extended family and stuff, just to have a genuine conversation, right? Because it's really hard when you have that sort of relationship where you're going to see them again and again and again, so it's hard for you to just completely just toss them out of your life.
Exactly.
So I don't have any advice, because I wish I had advice on that, and then my social interactions would be a lot better. It's like, it's so tough because like, whenever you always have to say, in outreach, I'm always saying, compare this to any other injustice. It's, obviously, if my family members or my friends were child abusers, I would instantly cut off ties with them. I would never speak to them again, right? So there is that hypocrisy there, and I think that it's because we live in a non-vegan world, and it's hard. It's hard to, then it's, it's like, it definitely is hard, right? So I don't have the perfect solution for that. What I have done when it comes to a lot of my buddies at the gym who are big meat eaters because I think they need it for muscle or whatever, I've had those tough conversations. And then I have found, and I'm not saying this is the right way to go about it, but what I have done is then I'll have those really hard hitting conversations and then back off for a while. Then we'll hit the gym a couple more times and, we'll just won't bring it up. And then I'll have that hard hitting conversation and we back off for a while. And you just kind of got to judge it, play it by ear. I'm not going to tell you that you should instantly drop every person out of your life who isn't vegan and is harming animals. But at the same time, I don't think it's the best thing to make people feel comfortable with hurting animals. So it really is a fine line that I'm still learning myself because I've only been vegan for 3 years and there's no clear-cut answer to this. It's such a tricky situation. What do you think?
Yeah, me too, man. I think you made a lot of great points there, dude. You've got, I think, a really healthy perspective on that. And I agree. Like it's tricky. It's tricky. You got to walk that. Everybody's got to choose where they're going to fall on that. Some people do the liberation pledge and they're never sitting at tables that, have anybody eating any non-vegan food. And they're walking that line a very, in a very sort of, commendable way, in a way that, I really respect, but I understand that not everybody is able to just, yeah. Hey dude, I didn't know you took the, dude, that is awesome. I didn't know you took
Yes, I haven't had any I just took it recently. I haven't actually had any, so I can't speak from any experience. So we'll see how it goes.
for people who are maybe listening and can't see. So Hudson, hold it up again so people who are watching can see. So
Yeah,
Hudson
so
has a
this thing right
pledge.
here, yeah, the Liberation Pledge. Basically, what it is that
So you've got
you,
a fork. It's like a fork that you've folded around
yeah,
your wrist. So it's this fork bracelet.
and basically what it means is that if you take a pledge, then you won't sit at a table with products that come from animal abuse. Just like how you wouldn't sit at a table where slaves are serving you. You wouldn't sit at a table where there is a dead human being served. It's that same, just extending those values to animals. And the reason why I took it is because I feel like it can. I haven't had too many interactions yet. I just took it recently in 2020. So my goal is that when people invite me out for lunch or some friends or whatever, my goal is that I'll say, hey, so I've taken this pledge. I'm not going to sit where I don't sit at tables that involve products of animal abuse. I would love to go to a vegan restaurant with you and get some dope vegan food. There's this great restaurant here if you want to join me. That way, then it's not isolating them and they'll be like, oh yeah, okay, I'll try that vegan food. They'll try some really good vegan food, see how good it is. You're both eating vegan meals. So then it's a lot easier to have that conversation because there's not like a dead animal right there while you're trying to talk about it. And
Right.
then it can lead to a much more smooth outreach conversation because it doesn't feel nearly as like guilty when you have that dead animal right there. So yeah, I'm going to see how it works, see how it plays out. And something I've been wanting to try for a while.
Keep me updated, man. Let me know how it goes. I know a few people who have taken that pledge, and I've definitely thought about it, but I have not taken it yet. But that's not to say that I won't someday. But yeah, keep me updated with how that goes, man. Keep me updated.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually, about like 2 years ago, I made a YouTube video talking about why vegans shouldn't take it.
Mm,
And so I'm open to like my perspective because at the time I was like, well, at the same time, it is good if you go to a non-vegan restaurant and you get this super good vegan meal that they would have never, if you get like the, Beyond Burger with the, vegan cheese and like looks super good, then your friends are gonna be able to see how good vegans eat, that they don't just eat salad. So yeah, like I'm going to see how this works and then compare the two, see what I think is more effective. So then just go from there.
that's wicked, man. That's wicked. So what else have you got on the horizon now? I know that it's kind of hard to think about what's coming next with this whole COVID-19 thing, but what's in this? Because you were supposed to be going around with Paul and Asal and doing all these, going around the world touring and doing all these AV events, Anonymous for the Voiceless, Cube of Truth stuff. And now we can't really go out and have big gatherings of people and talk in big crowds. That's not happening. So video editing from your home, I guess, is the plan for the indefinite future. Well, I guess your new home, right? You're moving out to New York.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see what happens. So yeah, I'm basically back in January before any of this even started. My family decided that they're going to relocate to Long Island, New York, and I am just kind of seeing where things are going to take me. Now that I'll be on the East Coast, I was on the phone with my sister earlier today. I might be moving to Rhode Island because my sister lives there. Um, and now that she may need a roommate because, her roommates are moving back with their family, given all this stuff. So yeah, we'll see. I think I'm like every other person on planet Earth right now. Who knows what the future is looking like? And we'll just see what happens. I think it's definitely scary. At the same time, though, it's not, because every single person in the world is going through this. So it would have definitely been awesome to travel with Anonymous with the Voices. We had planned to go to around like 15 countries, and I had never traveled anywhere outside of like North America. So I was really looking forward to that, going to Europe and stuff. I could look at it as glass half empty, but I'm so grateful that I was able to go to Australia and New Zealand for a month and just see how beautiful those places were. And if this thing happened a month earlier, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So I'm really grateful for that. And those were the two places that I was looking forward to the most. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure I can always go back to Europe at some point, and do some activism. But yeah, we'll just see where everything takes me. Just like everyone else in the world, it's kind of uncertain right now.
That's awesome, man. You've got such good perspective, dude. You've got a great attitude, and you're doing awesome content. And I think we've given people some good advice and some good things to think about in this little podcast we've done here. Is there anything else you wanted to say, or maybe you can let people know where they can find you online and stuff? What's all your handles on TikTok and all that?
Sure. Yeah, so you can find me on all social media, just Hudson Tarlow. And my last bit of advice, I'm sure Jason would agree, if you're not on TikTok, right now is the time to get on TikTok. This is I've noticed, I feel like especially in this pandemic, just so many more people are on it. I keep seeing on my For You page more and more celebrities getting on it. Everybody's bored out of their minds. Everybody's getting on it. And pretty soon the attention is going to dry out. You're going to have to be competing with Starbucks and Justin Bieber and all these people. So right now we're still in that early stage. So if you're listening to this and you're wanting to speak up for animals, and even just anything, if you're wanting to do anything online, TikTok is the place to be. So yeah, Jason, I'm sure you'd agree with that, but
I second that notion, man, for sure. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Hudson, for coming in and talking with me today, and for sharing some of your insights. And yeah, I really enjoyed talking to you, dude. Let's do it again sometime.
Oh, I'd love to do this. Yeah, this is epic. This is one of my first podcasts, so this is super fun.
Wicked. All right, man. Make sure you go check out Hudson, everybody, and we'll see you next time on the Vegan Champion podcast. Peace out.